super fun, and all about artisan cheese and more to melt your peaceful heart and toast your peaceful life. Coming to you from the Appalachian Mountains of southwestern Virginia, this is the Peaceful Heart FarmCast.
Hey, this is Scott Hall from Peaceful Heart Farm, and you are listening to the Peaceful Heart FarmCast.
Hello, everybody. Melanie Hall here. I hope you are doing very, very well. The conversation today and every day revolves around the value of tradition, traditional homestead living, traditional raw milk products, and artisan cheese. Topics discussed here are designed to create new perspectives and possibilities for how you might add a touch of tradition to your life. Life and death on the homestead. It is our joy and sorrow in daily life, and there's much to talk about here. I want to take a minute and say welcome to all the new listeners and say welcome back to the veteran homestead-loving regulars who stop by the FarmCast for every episode. Thank you so much for making this podcast possible. Now, what's going on in our Virginia homestead life? Should I start with the bad news or the good news? There was only one area of difficulty, and there is so much good news to share. Let's get the bad news out of the way and then move on to all the wonderful happenings on our homestead. I have good news and bad news regarding the quail. First, the bad. We have or had a predator. In the past couple of days, we lost 4 birds. I won't describe the details. Suffice it to say, it was not pretty. We do our best, our very best, to keep all of our animals safe. But sometimes predators are really, really persistent and innovative. We had a similar issue last fall. Just when you think you've taken care of the problem, a sly predator comes up with a new angle. So the quail hutch is 2 levels. On the top are 2 large cages for growing out the new chicks. Currently, there are 16 on one side and 17 on the other side for a total of 33 on that top level. Actually, that's not right. There are more than that up there now. Before the predator, there were 33 up there. Now the breeding stock has joined them. I believe there are 13 of them currently residing in the penthouse with the original 33. The bottom level of the hutch had the breeding stock. There are 3 cages, and each had 6 birds. 2 of the cages had 4 hens and 2 roosters, and one had 5 hens and 1 rooster. Ideally, we would have 5 hens and 1 rooster in each of the cages on the bottom for a total of 18 birds, 15 layers, and 3 roosters. However, last year we ended up with not enough hens to fill out the desired scenario and 2 extra roosters. And how did that happen, you say? Let me fill you in on that part of the story. Last fall, I learned my lesson about quail fertility. My last incubator batch of 40-something eggs only produced 8 chicks. Now, I did know that the rooster's fertility would diminish in the fall, along with the number of eggs that the hens produce. I just didn't know exactly when. And then once spring arrives, all returns to normal. And that's the normal cycle for the quail. We didn't get any eggs all during the winter. Some people have reported that they do get some eggs during the winter, but the rooster fertility is just not there at all. And so in September, the hens were still producing a lot of eggs. So I collected them all and put them into the incubator. And again, 8 chicks out of 40-something eggs. So the hens, they're laying eggs, just not fertile eggs. After a couple of weeks in the brooder, these 8 chicks moved into one of the upper cages. And we planned on keeping the hens to fill out the breeding stock, and then we would process the roosters. And there were only 8 birds to begin with, and the predator knocked that down to 6. 4 were hens, and they filled out some of the breeding stock that we needed. We still came up a little bit short there. But what to do with the 2 extra roosters? We decided not to bother with processing only 2 birds, and they got added to the breeder cages, so it was all one big happy family. And Scott worked on correcting that predator problem for the upper cage. Now let's get back to the present time. Um, First of all, one of our ladies just died for no apparent reason, and that happens sometimes. Quail just really don't live that long. And then the very next day, the predator began striking. We lost one rooster that first day, and the next day we lost 3 more birds. And at that point, we needed to act quickly or lose even more of our breeding stock. Once a predator has found out how to attack, how to get to your stock, it will continue, keep coming back and doing the same thing unless something is done. They've found their gravy train and they're going to keep going after it. So the first step was to move all of that breeding stock to the upper level. And we tied a piece of yarn on the leg of each of them so we can find them again. In a week's time, both the old and the new will be moved to another location, and we will restock the breeder cages and down below, and then we will process the rest of them. And then that in that upper cage will be replaced with the 50 that we currently have in the brooders right now. But we need to restock those breeder cages. And again, quail only live a couple of years anyway, and the breeders are already in their second year. So we will restock the breeder cages with all new birds from this batch that we just hatched out. I'm pretty sure I can get 15 hens and 3 roosters out of that. I hope so anyway. And if not, we still have those breeder hens. We will have enough to have 15 hens and 3 roosters. So then the objective now is to protect the quail. So Scott spent most of yesterday fortifying that hutch again, the bottom part this time. And I believe we have the issue resolved, but it was still sad to lose those beautiful birds. We don't even know what animal was getting to them. It climbed up on the outside. It's all this metal hardware cloth is what the cage is made out of. They're 1/2-inch squares. Somehow it had to be hanging upside down under the bottom of the lower levels where they're standing. And it must have been hanging on with one paw and grabbing with the other. I don't know. Anyway, Scott added another layer of hardware cloth to the bottom of the 2x4 frame. And so there's the floor of the cage, and then at the bottom of that 2x4 that frames that floor, he put another layer of hardware cloth. So that perpetrator can no longer reach the bottom of their cage while they are standing there. Now on the upside, let's go to the upside regarding the quail. Besides the 33 in the upper level, we have 50 chicks in the brooders, and I as I mentioned, they are about a week and a half old now and already have they're about half complete with their feathers. All chicks are born with down, but they have no feathers. And that's one reason they are in the brooder. So baby chicks, baby quail, all of the fowl are born with just down, and then they have to grow feathers. So they're in the brooder, and we can keep a light on them so that they stay warm. And once they're fully feathered, which is about 2 short weeks for quail, they will be able to handle the changing temperatures just fine. Anytime after that, they can be moved outside. It's an amazing fast growing cycle for these guys. So that's our baby quail. They're really doing really well. We have 2 white ones in this batch, so that's really interesting. I hope they're females because I'll probably want to keep them. Now the cows, I have more good news. More good news. I mentioned in an earlier podcast that the vet estimated Buttercup was about 6 months along in a 9-month gestation cycle. Well, she was off by a long way. Maybe she thought the Normandy calves would be larger. Anyway, Buttercup delivered a beautiful full-term heifer calf last Friday. So she didn't have 3 months to go. She only had 2 weeks to go. I named her Virginia. Scott named Wendell, which was Claire's calf, after one of the main characters in the 10th Kingdom. So I picked Virginia as she is another main character in that TV miniseries. So the 10th Kingdom aired on NBC in 2000. There were 5 shows, each was 2 hours. I believe it's available on Netflix now. It's a fantasy fairy tale miniseries, TV miniseries. We've had it on DV for many years and we've watched it many times. Um, they Two people from New York City and Central Park travel to this fairy tale kingdom where there's 9 kingdoms and there's Cinderella and Snow White and Little Red Riding Hood and all this stuff in there. So it's kind of fun. So Buttercup's Virginia is beautiful, healthy, and a welcome addition to our herd of Normandy cows. And this morning, I had to rescue Luna. Luna belonged to Cloud. She's Cloud's young lady. She had stuck her head through the fence and couldn't get it back out. The slope of her head allowed her to push through, but there, so that you see that where the eyes and the nose and all of that, there's a slope there. But when you get to the top of their head, there's a ridge there and it comes straight down on the back. And so she couldn't get her head back through because it kept catching on that ridge. And every time she turned her head to try to get past that ridge, her ear would get caught. It came down to getting the wire cutters to get her free. I wonder if she's learned her lesson. Some of the goats don't. She appears to be fine, but it gave me a scare for sure. She was really in distress. But all's well now. She's back out there checking out the salt lick and eating grass, hanging out with Wendell. Pretty soon Virginia's going to be hanging out with them. Now the donkeys got their nails done this week. Donkey hooves need to be trimmed 3 to 4 times a year. This time, while Scott was doing the manicure, I added a nice touch to their experience. Daisy and Sweet Pea usually just stand there and take it, but Coco and especially Johnny really don't like this hoof trimming business at all. While Scott was working on Daisy, I was brushing out the winter coats on Sweet Pea and Coco. I had already gotten Daisy taken care of while Scott was gathering equipment and getting ready. Johnny is too shy, so he didn't get his brushing. The girls had a deep winter coat, and there was a lot of hair coming out. I brushed and brushed and brushed and brushed. And I got all of the loose stuff, but it's still not all gone and probably won't be for another month. Once it is completely shed, the fluffy look that they still have, a bit of a fluffy look, will be replaced with the sleek, polished look. And I love seeing them when they have just that sleek coat. Maybe you haven't seen a donkey, but you might have seen a horse close up when they have that sleek coat. The donkeys are similar to that. Well, they were really, really loving all that brushing and that attention and stuff. Except Johnny, like I said, he doesn't have such a thick coat anyway, but he's just not as friendly as the girls. Now, in the garden, we worked through the rain to get the tomatoes supported. They're growing nicely, and I am looking forward to lots and lots of tomatoes in the near future. I will begin canning tomato sauce and barbecue sauce this fall. Got to fill those shelves back up. The sunflowers are amazing. Some of them are 3 feet tall already. And I said I'm growing these just for fun, and they are fun. I love those sunflowers. The green beans are blooming. I planted about 50 square feet of green beans. It was supposed to be 75, but I planted one bed with lima beans that I had those lying around, so I wanted to plant those. And then I have 3 more beds. I have a bed of white beans, one of red beans, and one of black beans. Those are all going to be dried beans that I make various things out of those dried beans. I've picked a couple of sweet banana peppers. And there are lots of cayenne and jalapenos coming along already, little tiny ones. I didn't see any blooms on the California Wonder bell pepper plants. Those plants may need to get larger before they can support those giant bell peppers. We are going to be inundated with peppers in the very near future. And my plan for those is dehydrating most of them. I might mix a few and grind them up into a homemade chili powder. What do you think? So I'll dry them separately, but then once they're dried, I might pick out a few different kinds and make a nice blend for chili powder. That sounds like fun. I am loving the woven ground cloth we put down in the garden. The garden looks pristine. Weeding takes only a short time and little effort. We shall see how this garden progresses. Right now, it's so gorgeous. Everything is all in these perfect little rows. There's no grass and clover and all kind of sticker bushes and stuff. None of that stuff is growing in there. It's so great. I just love it. Now, will there be problems with the disease and pests, more than normal? I mean, I don't know. We'll see. After we finished in the garden the day that we worked out there, we went to the orchard and we moved on to picking blueberries and strawberries. Last week I made some awesome blueberry jam and I plan on making another batch tomorrow. It is so great to pick the fruits of our labor, pun right there, and so tasty too. So this blueberry jam actually is only 1/3 sugar and 2/3 berries. Most jam recipes are the opposite, where there are more sugar than there are berries. But I have a great recipe. It doesn't use pectin. It's just the berries and sugar, and it's pretty easy to do. It's a little more tricky than just throwing some pectin in there and getting it to thicken up. But you also, again, you're not using as much sugar either. Now, as we're picking the blueberries, there were cicadas in the blueberry bushes, and those guys are mostly done with their life cycle. The noise has finally stopped. The incessant noise has stopped. Uh, and perhaps a small fraction of the females are still laying eggs. That's what we were seeing in the bushes. Again, they score the branch and then they lay their They lay their eggs in that scored place, and then the eggs hatch and they feed on the sap of the fruit bush. Then they drop to the ground and they dig in, and then they're down there for 17 years before they pop out again. So there was a few of those that I saw in the blueberry bushes. They're in the fruit trees and so on. So that cicada life cycle is just about done. And so now it's time for the Japanese beetles, right? Those kind of purpley, blue, green, purpley bugs. But we have some great traps that will help keep them away from the fruit bushes, the canes, and the trees. Our fruit is pest challenged every year, mostly by these Japanese beetles. Now, also, as I was working through the blueberries, picking those great blueberries, I ran across a hornet nest and 2 small wasp nests in the blueberry bushes. No stings, though. Thank goodness. I don't respond well to stings. EpiPen at the ready. Now, the last thing I'm going to talk about today is the creamery, and I really don't have much to say here. The creamery hasn't progressed much this week, as you might imagine. With all of those above activities, Scott has not been able to move forward as quickly as he would have liked. We've also had rain in the past few days, and if the rain lets up today, he will be back at it with gusto. So next week, maybe we'll have more on that. The small cheese cave is doing fantastic. I just waxed another cheese, and the Havarti style cheese that we call Peaceful Heart Gold. And I'll be making another cheese on Monday, and we'll have even more milk. I'll make a larger cheese or more cheeses because Buttercup, her milk will be added to the pot this week. Final thoughts. Yeah, it was a small bit of bad news and lots of good news, and that's how we like it. It's an amazing experience. In the spring, things change so fast. The trees are all leafed out. Just a few short weeks ago, their branches were bare. The grass is growing like crazy, and the animals definitely love that. And the garden has gone from a blank slate to greenery waving in the breeze. Yes, I love spring. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hop over to Apple Podcasts, subscribe, give me a 5-star rating and review. And please share it with friends or family who might be interested in this type of content. That is the best way to help out this show. And thank you so much for stopping by the homestead. And until next time, may God fill your life with grace and peace.